Good afternoon, everybody in the UK, and whatever time it is, in whatever part of the world you're in, good day. We're all in different time zones, me and my guests, or had this time thrust upon us, but by the time you see it, it's all going to be uploaded on YouTube until, of course, or unless, of course, they've taken it down. We've had many shows taken off YouTube. We do actually request all of our subscribers to go to windowsontheworld.net and subscribe to us on Spreaker, because we're shut down pretty much everywhere. We do our Sunday shows on Spreaker. You can listen to them at windowsontheworld.net on the live shows page and subscribe to us on Spreaker there. We're also on Odyssey. All of our Sunday shows go to Odyssey. They do not go to YouTube anymore because we've had so many removed. So please subscribe to us on Odyssey and Spreaker. We also have a Discord channel for people who like conversation, people who are sick and tired of wasting their time on social media. Maybe you'd like to go to our Discord channel and engage with a slightly different level of intellect. I'll leave it there. But tonight we're going to be talking, or today, whenever it is with you, we're going to be talking to Jerry Marzinski, great friend of mine in a minute. We've known each other for a long time. We've done many shows, go back into the archive. I interviewed Jerry many years ago. We're talking about the influence of negative influences, entities, the negative entities and their influences, actually. And the first show I did with Jerry was Are Demons Real? And then we followed up with several others. And I'd seen Jerry being interviewed on a show which absolutely fascinated me, because I'd never seen anybody in the psychiatric profession actually talking about spiritual possession. And Jerry was the only person talking about that and the influence of negative entities. And anyone who's experienced this will know what I'm talking about. And those who don't may want to listen. We've got a special guest tonight, a young lady who had an experience through many experiences which brought in negative entities and influences into her life. What we're going to be talking about tonight is what to do about it as well. So go back into the back catalogue, have a look. There's lots of stuff that we've already done. Just look up Jerry Marzinski in our archive at windowsontheworld.net and you'll find many shows there. So I'm going to introduce Jerry now and we're going to get going. So Jerry, welcome.
Hi, good to be back with you again, Mark. My name's Jerry Marzinski, and I spent my entire professional life on the front lines of mental health. I've worked in the largest psychiatric institution on the planet for 7 years. I've worked in mental health centers. I've worked in private psychiatric hospitals. I've worked in the hospital emergency rooms doing psych crisis. I've got a BA in psychology. I've got a master's degree in counseling. I spent years in a PhD psych program. And I've spent all that time studying the voices that schizophrenics hear. And at first I thought they were hallucinations like I was taught in graduate school. But that the longer I spent on the front lines, the less sense that made. So here's psychiatry saying they're due to a chemical imbalance in the person's brain. That's never been proven. Matter of fact, it's been disproven. They're still advertising schizophrenia as a chemical brain imbalance and calling the voices hallucinations. So when you start studying the voices, they run patterns. They run a series of 25 or 30 patterns. And these are repeatable patterns that run over and over and over again. And anything that runs patterns is not a hallucination. So I found that it is the voices, the schizophrenic voices, that drive paranoid schizophrenia. And if you could get rid of those by any means, all symptoms of schizophrenia leave with them. But the psychiatric mafia and the pharmaceutical industry have everybody distracted by saying, oh, they're hallucinations. So who's going to study hallucinations except an oddball like myself? You know, it just, what they were doing made no sense. So they say, okay, it's a chemical brain imbalance. But then when you watch what they do, they don't run any kind of test whatsoever to see what chemicals in the brain are in balance or out of balance. Matter of fact, when I saw that, I asked them, they just start prescribing antipsychotic drugs, which are very toxic. And I asked them, I said, if you're not running any tests to find out what's out of balance, how do you know what's out of balance or by how much? And what I found out is they don't have any such tests. They don't even know what the chemical balance of the brain should be. They don't know what causes schizophrenia. They don't know what cures it. What they basically are doing is throwing a friggin' mental hand grenade at the person's brain and causing a chemical lobotomy, which just sucks you out, So these voices are entities. They're intelligent entities to different degrees, and they're after generating as much negative emotional energy as possible, and then they drain it off. Now, this sounds like science fiction.
Jerry, I think a really important point which we brought up before is that these entities have access to your whole, or the whole memory of the person who they take over. And I think that's really important because they can torture their victims. And the whole point of what we've been trying to get out is that there are ways to defend yourself against this. And I've had many conversations with you over the years about this because I've been in situations where these things have been very apparent. And it's fascinated me, but we've had very similar experiences in the kind of experience through these negative entities through other people. In other words, they can actually paralyze you, and they have an awful lot of control over the person that they are exerting the control over. So the person becomes completely oblivious to what they're doing. And I think that's really what we're going to be talking about tonight. This idea that people are genuinely possessed when they don't know what they're doing and they don't have their own thoughts and emotions anymore.
Well, one of the misnomers that society pushes on us is that every thought that you have that comes through your mind belongs to you. That is not the truth. Emanuel Swedenborg brought that up some 700 years ago, Christian mystic. Every negative thought about yourself or anybody else does not come from you. You're told that all your thoughts belong to you. They don't. And with schizophrenics, those thoughts are negative, they're destructive, they're evil. What they want to do is upset the person. You won't find a happy schizophrenic anywhere. What they do is they generate negative emotional energy and then they suck it off. And shamans know this. So these things are parasites. And a lot of times the way they start off with innocence is like Shannon and Mark have experienced. You start playing with Ouija boards or doing seances or stuff like that. And you're actually inviting these things to come in. And then it gets worse from there.
That's called gateways, Jerry. I mean, I'm very much into this and I've talked about it a lot, that a lot of New Age practices, what they call New Age practices, which is basically opening yourself up to entities jumping in that you know nothing about. And the whole thing is that it's a misnomer in that people think it's all, if you open yourself up, it's all love and light. It's anything but, because the whole point of looking into this historically is that people have always had to fight off these entities. They are omnipresent, they're everywhere. And at the moment, the whole system is bringing in more and more of this, and people are becoming more and more possessed. And we're seeing that with the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, all the rest of it. All of this stuff is bringing in conflict, negativity. And that's also part of what's going on. But when you experience the power that these things have, we just talked briefly about things like Ouija boards and all the rest of it. People used to do this in the Victorian era, thinking it was very, very exciting. And they were, like Madame McCarthy in, I think it was Oscar Wilde's play. And she went, is anybody there? Give me a sign. Is anybody there? And this all caught on with these Victorians, but they don't know what they're inviting in, because these things that are hanging around in the ether in the lower dimensions, what are they there for? If they had any use or any purpose, they wouldn't be there in the first place. They'd be doing something else. So all you're getting by doing that is getting these dregs of entities and negative beings thrown into your close circle. And I experienced that years ago. Lots of people experience that, but then you move on, and then you start seeing people who've got genuinely possessed by opening themselves up, often through, it could be drug abuse, alcohol, it can be sexual abuse. These are all gateways to opening people up, so they lose their minds to these entities. And these entities are archetypes. Often they are archetypes. I've seen them in front of me, and they are very much the kind of entities that are described historically, that archetypal entities like Lilith, these creatures which masquerade as something else. The beautiful woman who you see, and it's a hag, and it's this kind of demonic creature. And in a lot of religions, a lot of religious practice, this stuff is brought in. It's brought in with elements of religion which Westerners have actually accepted. So there's a lot of acceptance of this stuff, and people don't understand that once you let it in, then basically that means consent. Once you consent to it, then these things have been invited. Now, if you don't consent to it, then you will often get attacked. And that is something that I have experienced, and these things can be pretty scary. But if you stay within yourself and focus, then I think you can do something about it. What Jerry has experienced over the years is absolutely fascinating, because he's seen it on the front line through case studies and cases. So that's the thing, Jerry. I think I wanted to sort of bring that into the broader perspective to start with, because we've talked about are demons real as far as schizophrenia goes. But I think if we broaden it out, and we tried to do that on our show with George, and I think we succeeded, because we brought Sherry in and we talked about how you can fight these things off. So that's really going to be the basis of tonight's show, in that there is a positive side to this. Do you want to come in again, Jerry? Because I thought I'd just kind of frame it there.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One thing that came to mind, if you're paying attention to what's happening on the planet right now, what the deep state and these vaccine nuts are telling us is it fits the same pattern as the schizophrenic psychotic voices. I mean, it's the same pattern. They generate fear, they generate negativity, they badger you, it's the same pattern. These deep state operatives are evil, and they've got a grip on the planet, and they're fixing to try to destroy it. So resist what they're doing. Do not take those medications. You know, there's no need to take a vaccine for a virus that has a 99.9% cure rate. Think about why they're pushing these on you right now. They're trying to force people to take them. They're trying to force vaccine passports. Do not go for it. You know, each and every one of you need to resist this. This is evil. This is not good stuff. And you look at drugs now too. Methamphetamine is one of the biggest drugs that just opens people up to being possessed by these things. I mean, it just opens up the gates, and it's like, hey, come on in and take me over. And they're generating that by the ton. So what we're going to be talking about today is a little different than normal. What we have is what the voices do if they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, if the person who's hearing voices has a significant other. I've seen that they can get their hooks in that person, and then they slowly start torturing them and making their lives miserable, and begin to destroy them. I've talked to prisoner after prisoner who had a very nice girlfriends, very sweet girlfriends, who were attracted to bad boys. And they got their hooks in these girls, and they just slowly destroyed them. So we have Marie on today. She had a boyfriend who was hearing voices, and she's going to talk about what that was like and the experiences she's had with that. So there's a lot of you out there who have a significant other who are hearing voices, and those voices are going to go after you. They don't want the person to have any relationship that they can't control. If they can't control the relationship, they'll try to break it. So they're around us all the time. They're hitting us all the time. And you've all experienced it when you're walking down the street and you have this negative thought that just is absolutely horrible. It doesn't belong in your thought stream. You know it isn't yours. You'd never act on it. It even gives you the willies to think about that thought. That's them putting a thought in your head. So what these negative voices do is they fill the person's head with negative thoughts, and they try to get the person to believe that those thoughts belong to them, that they're their thoughts. And as long as they can do that, they can drive your behavior. But once you realize that these negative thoughts don't come from you, they come from another source, and they're trying to drive you to do things that are going to get you in trouble, to generate negative emotional energy, which they then drain off and feed off of. So these things are parasites, and they hit us all. It's not just the schizophrenics, and they are not hallucinations. And schizophrenics have been trying to sell psychiatry that since the day psychiatry came into being. And psychiatry goes, no, they're hallucinations. Take these drugs. They knock these people out. They tell them that they're hallucinations, and they don't listen to them at all. So what happens is the person eventually stops taking the drugs, and then they go psychotic again. These drugs are toxic. They're very poisonous. With long-term use, they will shrink your brain and rot out your peripheral nervous system. And psychiatrists, for the most part, aren't telling the people how dangerous these drugs are or what they do to them. The only times these drugs should be used is when the person cannot control their thoughts or control their selves. And after that, the programs that we've developed Sherry and I have developed, and you can find these for free on our website at jerrymarzinski.com. Those programs should be implemented immediately. That's a live program. You need to understand that these things are real. They can go into your mind. They can bring up every negative thing you've ever done, and they can throw it in your face forever until they start generating that negative emotional energy, and then they suck it off and they drain you. So what we have today is Marie. She's going to talk about her experience of being involved with a person who was eaten up with voices. And those voices were telling her boyfriend was telling her that she should kill herself. So that's how bad it got. Mark's had some experience with this too. So we're going to bring her back on with Mark, and she's going to tell her story about what it was like to live with somebody while she was hooked by this person and she couldn't break away, and her experiences, because there's a lot of you out there in the same boat. And you're going to, at some point, if your loved one cannot control the voices and won't do anything to help themselves, you need to get out of there before you get hurt.
That's right. And yeah, we've talked over the years about this, and I'm going to bring Marie in a minute. So yeah, people out there, I hope you find this useful. I've got rather fatigued with even talking about this stuff because it's extremely draining, especially when you're up against it and you know it's real. And there's people out there who still dispute it because they've got blinkers on or they haven't experienced it. Anything outside the experience of many people, they actually denigrate as though it doesn't exist, which is exactly what this show is all about, in the encompassing of experiences and information which is taboo to most people, but it's actually provable. So I'm going to bring in Marina.
Well, it's in a second. So that's exactly what psychiatry and the pharmaceutical industry want you to believe, that these things are not real. They are hallucinations and can only be treated by their toxic drugs. So who is going to investigate a hallucination? So they got that door blocked off. So once people realize that these things run patterns, and we have posted those patterns on our website, patterns are not hallucinations. So they're selling over $4 billion a year of these toxic drugs that cure nothing. All they do is suppress psychotic symptoms and make the person worse in the long run. 60% of the people who use these drugs over an extended period of time are going to suffer brain damage and neurological damage. They should only be used short term to implement the kind of programs that we've developed and let the person fight back themselves. So we need to teach schizophrenics how to fight these things themselves. And they hate the 23rd Psalm. They hate churches. They hate prayers. So what kind of hallucination hates anything positive, spiritual? You know, it doesn't make any sense. The voices are not hallucinations. The Bible mentions Jesus casting out demons over 23 times, I think it was. And yet here's our Christian society. Once psychiatry shows up on the scene, gets their demonic drugs and starts selling them. You know, all of a sudden the voices become hallucinations for their profit. You know, people need to wake up. These things are around us all the time, and they attack all of us, not just schizophrenics, all of us. So we'll let Shannon tell you her story. So she'll be looking at it as the girlfriend of a boyfriend she had who was hearing voices and what she experienced during that time.
Okay, Jerry, I'm just going to bring her in now.
Okay.
Okay, Marie, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Great, yeah, of course.
I was going to say, it's a wonderful day for an exorcism.
That's right. Well, it's always a good day for an exorcism. But
Yep.
yeah, it was interesting. What we've been talking about is giving a bit of background. Jerry's given a bit of background and how I've been talking to Jerry for years. It's interesting. Someone said I first heard Jerry on the Richie Allen show. I've been interviewing for about 4 or 5 years now, haven't I? We've been talking for at least 5 years, I think, Jerry.
Yeah.
Time.
Hello?
Yeah. Yeah, connection problem, but it should be all right. Yeah. I think it's come back now. So, okay then, Marie, tell us your story and just basically tell us how things started going wrong and what you noticed, because that's very important, but also the background to this of what we were talking about just before the show.
Should I go back as far as like childhood, or should I just go back as far as the beginning of the relationship? I do think that there's a bit of a connection. But
okay.
If you don't mind, I had a Catholic upbringing, and I was going to mass and stuff, and I was in Catholic school. But then earlier on in my life, I was influenced by a family member to do like tarot cards and wanting to do seances and stuff like that, and crystal balls and all that stuff. I had a family member, an aunt, was pushing this sort of stuff on me behind my mother's back, so she wasn't really aware of it, and she's pushing all this stuff on me. And it sparked my interest into the occult. And then as I became a teenager, I became a very unruly teenager, and I was very falling into bad crowds all the time. I know it's very common, but I would literally go to haunted houses with a Ouija board and think I was really cool and try to conjure up stuff. And because I watched so many movies about ghosts and Beetlejuice, and I thought, oh, I'm like, this is real, and you know what I mean? And like, I didn't know it was demonic. I thought, oh, it's just ghosts, I thought, oh, they're just people that died in that house, and they're just inhabiting it. And I didn't know what I was messing with. Even though I was told not to, I would have done it anyway. I was just that kind of person. Like, I will do the opposite of what people tell me to do. And that was like the nature that I had. So I fell into this sort of pattern, and I was completely open to the occult and a lot of different things. So when I was 17, I met a person who was all into like LSD, and he was we became boyfriend and girlfriend. He was all into LSD, and he was all into like the occult as well. And he was talking a lot about like sort of like magic and with a K and Aleister Crowley, and he was doing a lot of weird stuff. And sorry, I'm just kind of losing my train of thought because I'm very kind of nervous. So we got together, and he was talking about, he said that he used to speak to aliens and stuff like that, and I thought, oh, that's super cool. Things like that. And he was always talking about occult sort of things. He was listening to talks. He was always talking about like reading stuff about like, highest 33rd degree Freemasonry and things like that. But he would also like exhibit these really weird fits of rage all of a sudden, and he would talk about like the fact that the Kundalini spirit or something, where he would say that something curled up his spine, and when he took LSD or something, and it messed with his energy or something like that. And I don't know how to explain it, but see, when we moved in together, things were fine for a while, but there was this one morning that I woke up and the entire living room was just trashed. There was broken stuff all over the floor. Like, he smashed my laptop, he smashed everything, and I just accepted it as, oh, he's just unwell. But he started to like talk to himself. Like, he started to like go, what? Like, turn around and start pacing around the room. He'd like punch walls, he'd punch himself. He'd get like broken glass would be like all over the floor. There'd be blood all over the walls. Like, he rapidly declined. He stopped eating. He stopped socializing. He stopped being able to clean his own clothes or do anything for himself. Like, he was getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and he was severely like and this sounds like mental illness, what I'm describing to you now, but I thought it was, but then the weird stuff started happening to me. Like, I started to see things in relation, and I started to hear things. So it wasn't, and this was I believe, from interaction and living with him. So you probably think hearing this now, she's just hysterical talking about a mental illness. No, I'm not in any way. Like, I wouldn't exploit mental illness like that. So
Well,
it got
let me break in a second here. Where he was talking to himself, that's what most people believe is happening. These people they're talking to their voices. They're arguing with their voices. Their voices are telling them to do rotten stuff, and they're arguing and screaming back at them. So when I was working in the hospitals, in the psychiatric hospitals, there was always patients walking around talking apparently to themselves, but these conversations are coherent. I mean, they're not word salad. It's like hearing one side of a telephone conversation. They are talking to the voices. They are not talking to themselves, and the voices are usually telling them to do bad stuff, and they're arguing against it.
I just want to come in here, Jerry, because I don't know whether you've had this, Marie, but you can actually almost read what's going on in the minds of people when they're under this kind of influence.
Yep.
In other words, you know that something else is in control, and you know that thing wants to attack and destroy you.
Yeah.
And I've seen that face to face. Yeah.
He was insulting the voices. He was like, yeah, fuck you, and all this kind of stuff. Go fuck yourself. He would say to them all the time. Like, I don't mean to swear, by the way, but yeah, he was literally having an argument. But what I thought was thin air, but their voices were telling him to do stuff, because he'd get up in the middle of the night, leave in the middle of the night, sometimes said, I have to kill him. And he would go out, and I was just like, I didn't really know what to do. Like, is he really going to kill someone? I was a kid, so I was like, I thought maybe he's just saying that to make me worry about him, because he would just be like, I have to kill him, because he was always saying that he had to kill someone, and he was always talking about someone that I'm not going to say who it is or anything, but it was like a family member or somebody, and he would always say, I have to kill him, and then go, I know this person done this, I know this person done that. Like, he would say that he knew things about people, and he knew he just had to kill them. And he would get up in the middle of the night, about 3 a.m., by the way, the demonic witching hour, of course, but I didn't notice that. Yeah. I didn't notice that. So he'd go missing at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I would be running about in the middle of the town. Like, I'm 18 years old, 19, running about the town just trying to find him and make sure, like, I didn't know how to explain to, like, police or anything, because if, say, he could just go to the police and just deny that he ever said it, and then I was afraid of him also, so I was just like, I don't think he's gonna. I didn't know if he would kill them or not, and I didn't know if I should have probably spoke out about it. I was so afraid and wasn't thinking properly. I just kind of didn't really know what to do.
Yeah, that's normal when you get hit by that. There was one gal I talked to who was involved with somebody who was hearing voices, that he got up at 3 a.m, which their voices are usually strongest at 3. He got this big butcher knife. He left the apartment, went out onto the lawn in front of the lady's the apartment, and he started stabbing the lawn with this big butcher knife, just repeatedly.
You know, that's very funny because a girl that I know lives in that person's street that he went to go and kill. She says to me, I saw a guy, I think it was your ex or somebody. I saw a guy in my garden at like 5 in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning with like a bow and arrow or something, like trying to shoot a bow and arrow or something. Like she said that she and her father saw that. And like, I never really, I never really put the pieces together that it might have been him. I was just like, and he was always, and I didn't know that that's what he was probably up to. But he was running around the garden at someone's garden at 3 in the morning, wanting to kill them. Like, and I just like, well, this was a while back after. This was like after he died. She told me this, so I didn't really know for sure like what was going on. But when that the thing is, leaving at 3 in the morning was a big one, and there was one where he would be telling me to kill myself. Like he would be like, kill yourself. And he would always just bring me down. Like if I had any kind of positivity, he would make sure that I suffered for it. Like I was punished for any kind of positive feeling if I wanted to.
And that's what they do. That's common. They can't stand any positive anything. They can't stand any kind of joy. If they see that their partner is happy or joyful about anything, they'll attack them and destroy that. They want complete power over the person, and they'll slowly try to. The voices will slowly try to destroy anybody who tries to help these people out.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to help him, and the way I thought that I was helping him was I was like, he loved weed. Apparently, weed they don't like weed very much, but the person that's possessed loves to smoke weed. Maybe it's the CBD. I take CBD sometimes,
Yeah, it calms them down. So the voices don't like weed. They want alcohol that has a nasty withdrawal. They want meth is their favorite one, but they don't like weed because it calms these people down without a withdrawal effect. So
and he was addicted to weed then, and then I thought, oh, maybe
when you say Marie, when you say addicted to weed, do you mean skunk or one of these hybridized cannabis?
Well, anything you can get off the streets. Like it's not legal.
Well, there you go then. So that's not weed then, is it? So I think we have to make this delineation here, because these hybridized forms of marijuana cause extreme psychosis. And I've seen that even close up with people.
I've had
they call it
that kind of stuff. I've smoked that when I was a teenager, and yes, I had a really bad psychosis, and I felt like, well, there was times where I was even hearing things, and I was, going crazy, thinking I could read people's minds and stuff, like literally hearing people's thoughts and stuff, and then hearing music that wasn't there, and like I had like full on hallucinations with I don't take anything. I'm straight edge, like I don't take any drugs or nothing, or but when I was a teenager, I experimented a lot with that. But you're absolutely right. It could have been that skunk, because I used to live in a country where it was legal, and we would go to the the dispensary, and you would get like CBD weed, and it would be balanced, and you would probably smoke that, and it wouldn't have got the same effect. So I think, Mark, you definitely bring that up, really important, because it doesn't have the stuff that's on the streets in places where it's prohibited is really, really problematic.
Yeah, they mix it with other drugs. They mix it with other drugs for the high.
I'm pretty sure they mix it with PCP or something, because, or ketamine or some sort of or salvia even as well, because the way that it messes with your mind, like, is terrible. But he did smoke that, and the weed calmed him down for the most part. I didn't understand why he took so well to the stuff, because if I smoked it, I would be having like a full-on mental breakdown, like. So do you know what else actually helped him? It was, there's people that he knew that would be able to get the ecstasy, and I'm not a drug advocating ecstasy or anything, but it's the MDMA. But apparently that was the one he said that really calmed him down. Like he was able to go out to a nightclub and party and have fun and take this ecstasy, and he didn't get any experiences with the voices. He was a completely normal person that night. And so there's drugs that they do hate, like they do want you to be on too. It's like alcohol is a lot of them drown out the voices with the alcohol. or people take cocaine. Cocaine's a big one that's as well, I think. But there, you know, or I know a guy who's schizophrenic who's addicted to Percocets. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so like Oxycontin and stuff.
What they do is they try to push the person toward drugs that have a nasty withdrawal effect. So keep in mind that their goal is to generate negative emotional energy. That's why all the stuff that they say is negative. That's why their attacks are negative. That's why the drugs they want you to take have negative withdrawal effects. They want you fearful. They want you controlled. They want to generate whatever negative emotional energy that they can, because that's then they suck it off. That's what they feed off of. So they're parasites.
Yeah.
You know? And they hit us all.
They hate us, yeah, they do. See, I thought that he just had a mental illness. I didn't really know what was going on at the point, but I was in my cognitive dissonance, and I thought, you know, but leading up to the end, I started to see, like, I started to hear voices, not in my head, but I was sitting in my room one morning and I heard someone crying, like wailing, outside my room on the stairway, right, going down the stairs, and I heard someone crying, and I thought, oh, what the frick does he want now? Like, I thought it was him, because I was fed up. He's like, he's always moaning about something. This is my sort of, I don't know, it's the way I was back then. I would just be like, because I was so used to the way he was going on. I was like, what does he want now? Like, I was so callous to his emotional state, because like mine was being so damaged. It's like, what does he want now? He's just So he came back into the house. Like, he was gone all morning. He came back in the house. I'm like, where were you? And he's like, I was out, and he brought back shopping and stuff. So I'm like, so he had like, you know, his can of Sprite and his, you know, chips or whatever. I'm like, how? What? Like, I was sitting just like, what is going? Like, I was just like, definitely heard you in the home, and I thought maybe he was lying to me, but like he was definitely out, because he literally had a shopping bag with stuff in it. There was a time where I also had old Hag Syndrome as well afterwards, but what happened was, I know, I had a dream that in the house, and this was an area of the house where other people were saying, you know, this house is haunted, especially that living room part. So I had a dream about that I was in the house, and there was a bald man with like a black coat, sitting at a wee table with a chessboard, and he comes to me and he says, come play. So I sat down, and he checkmated me, and he goes, I want your friend Jack. And I didn't know I was like, what do you want with Jack? I was like, I don't know who, because it was not my ex, by the way. It was just a friend who was experimenting with loads of drugs, who was probably going to end up ODing or something, because he was just taking everything under the sun. Like, he was on ketamine, he was on, you know, candy flipping acid and stuff like that. Like, I was the person that was like observing everybody. I was not taking any of those drugs, so I was like, I don't know, you guys are stupid. No, I haven't taken any psychedelics or anything like that. Like, I think I'll just observe you guys and see how you react to it. I was more like just sort of like curious as to how it, like, I was the mad scientist, sort of like watching everybody else.
I think the main point here is that all these things are a gateway, and people seem to put up arguments to defend their drug use a lot of the time. They'll go, oh yes, but I don't smoke skunk, I smoke this and I smoke this. Now, these arguments are irrelevant in a way, because what actually affects one person in a very mild way might affect another person in an extremely dramatic way. For instance, many people can only tolerate small amounts of alcohol, and they will go absolutely psychotic on half a bottle of wine. So there is no real measure for this stuff. So I think that part of the conversation should be moved on from now, because what we're really talking about is the way these negative entities get in. Yes, these things are a gateway, and they definitely are. But what I've found about it, and what I've been talking to Jerry about it for many years, is that there seems to be a way of defending yourself even though these things can be very, very powerful. Now, I'm not talking about people who look a bit possessed or are out of their heads. I'm talking about people with psychotic rage who are genuinely possessed, who don't look like themselves anymore. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm sure you've experienced that too. Now, the thing is that I'm interested in what we do to defend ourselves against this stuff, because I've been battling it for years. It's been coming at me from many different directions. I've found it extremely fascinating. And because I've got a kind of analytical brain, I want to find out what this is really about. And the delineation between what you're observing and what is actually happening is something I find incredibly interesting. But I do know that this stuff is real, and the actual effects of it are tangible. And we talked about the thoughts that get put into our heads. Now, I had recently something happen which is very strange. Somebody I know had become quite intoxicated, but their illness started showing up. And then they started exhibiting signs of hatred, of irrational hatred, which made absolutely no sense. And that escalated. And when it came on, it was full on. The strength was superhuman as well. And that's what I'm finding interesting, is how do you start to defend yourself when this stuff comes in? Because what actually tends to happen is, when these entities are very strong, is that what I've found, and I think we talked about this, Jerry, is that you get this you can either get a feeling of seduction with these entities when they're drawing you in, or there's this kind of paralysis that goes on. It's almost like a paralysis hits your body, like you've been hit by something. You've hit by a massive electric shock. Could you expand on that a bit, Jerry? Because that is something I find really fascinating. And there is a cure for that. There is a way of dealing with it, but you have to remain so centered within yourself. You cannot lose it for 1 second. Can you just come in on that, Jerry?
Well, the only real cure is to move in a positive spiritual direction. You know, so these things are negative. These things are demonic. Most people are there's a balance there, you know, between the negative and the positive. If you're not moving in a positive spiritual direction, you're going to stall out and start losing ground. So that doesn't necessarily mean church, you know, or religion. It means God, Jesus, or whatever, you know, positive spiritual force. How does AA put it? A higher power, a higher positive power. Because if there's negative, there's positive. Okay, so where you put your energy, where you put your attention, is what you're strengthening. So if you pay all your attention to these negative thoughts and negative entities, you're actually strengthening them. You're causing them to get stronger. Where if you start focusing in a positive spiritual direction, that gets stronger, and these things start fading out. So, you know, the programs we put out, they're not fast, they're not easy, but they work. I mean, you can get rid of them, but it takes work on the part of the patient. So one of these things is that we realized is that the voices are constantly telling lies, all kinds of lies to upset you. They want to generate that negative emotional energy that they feed off of. So if you cut them off of that, they will slowly starve. But, you know, and if you keep at it, you know, once they start starving, they're going to kick up and try to break that, almost like somebody drowning is going to struggle to get back to the surface. They're going to try to break you from that. So the 23rd Psalm is one of the things they hate the most. And it depends on how much control they have over you. If they have complete control over you, or that you can't control them, then you have to rely on the medicines, these toxic medicines that antipsychotic drugs that psychiatry is dishing out. And the only reason those work, not because of some chemical brain imbalance, they work because they calm the person down. They sedate the person. Where they're not, it's awful hard to generate negative emotional energy with somebody who's sedated and very calm. and they hate that. So one of the first things they go after is those medications. The problem is those medications don't cure anything. They're a temporary Band-Aid. There is no chemical imbalance. So basically, these things they're major tranquilizers. That's what they are. So,
Yeah.
you know.
They stop them from being cast out as well, you know. And especially in the Catholic world, they talk about exorcisms as well. And I know some people might not be religious or whatever, but it's good. It's worth looking at exorcist sort of stuff from the church because it's helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do. The drugs actually can prevent the person from being liberated from the demons as well because they are not neurologically able to actually consent to casting them out, you know, because they're so sedated.
Yep.
So yeah, they also prevent that as well.
So
Well, yeah,
Marie,
that's just it. All it is really, it's like a purgatory. It's a sense of purgatory. So the drugs just cause that. They put you into kind of a dark space between here and there, which is no good at all. So it doesn't solve anything. And it's the solving it that's interesting. And when we talked with Sherry and we talked with George last time, Jerry, that was a great show. We got into the real meat and potatoes of the matter, which is what you do about it. And this way of dealing with it. Now, I think it's beyond just like positive and negative emotion. I think it actually is a need to strengthen yourself with some kind of energy as well, because what I found is it attacks the solar plexus. And we talked about that, Jerry. I find that is a common thing with these negative entities. They attack the solar plexus and they make you feel very weak and off balance. And that is when you have to be very, very careful. Is that something that you've experienced, Marie?
Well, he always said that he had a pain in his side, and he said that the demons were sucking the soul out of his side. So I don't know. He was always doubled over in pain, sort of like holding his stomach. For me, certainly, I don't know. Whenever I was being attacked by him, I always felt the nerves in my stomach, like when you feel like venom from someone. It's just stabbing you right in the pit of your stomach. It's like that.
Yep.
It's like hatred. Like you can feel that someone says something or spiteful or like so hateful or so evil. You can just feel it in the pit of your stomach. I think is that what you're explaining?
Well, I was talking more about your experience of what his experience brought to you, because that's what we're talking about. I was talking about the projection of negative energy from people who are invaded by these entities or have this psychotic rage which is caused by that, because it's a different kind of rage. Once you have seen this, once you've seen what you could call demonic rage, it's not the person who's doing it, it's what's taken over the person that's doing it. And what I'm talking about here is dealing with that entity itself, because you know it's no longer the person. The person is going to be drained after, they're going to have no energy, and they probably won't remember a lot of it either. That's another thing, especially if they have imbibed any substance. And this is where I think is a really important point, because once that gateway is slightly opened, it can only open more. And that is something I think is really important, because you can say, oh, I only went out for a couple of beers, well, okay, that's all very well. But once that gateway does open, I think you have to be very aware. And that's what I've always found, that if I've felt a bit inebriated, like some negative thing could happen, I've always been able to pull myself back. But the point is, once these things jump into these people, they can't pull themselves back. They've gone. And the dealing with that, we've gone through a bit of it, but I still find it quite fascinating, because I've had some escapes where my life's been genuinely in danger over the past couple of years, with a few things that have happened with these kind of demonic attacks through people who become possessed by entities. I've seen it. And there is almost a weird thing that happens, weird as in strange, as in unexplained, in that you can if you are in the right frame of mind, it's almost like what you could call divine intervention. In other words, a set of circumstances will arise where you escape. And that's happened to me on quite numerous occasions. And I've no idea, it was almost like a miracle that it happened. So there is something with this higher self and the ability to be able to bring down a very good defense and awareness when this is happening. That's what I'm trying to get to here, because I went on a course years ago with people who were studying the out-of-body experience and also intrusion by entities. Some of their stuff I found a bit crazy, but some of it made sense. And they were trying to reach a state where these things could no longer intrude. And I find that really interesting, because I think that it is possible. And when you're talking about exorcism, the people who carry out the exorcisms have to be very aware of any form of intrusion, right? Now, it's easier, I would say, for a third party to do that. If you're in a close friendship or relationship with a person who's being used by an entity to attack you, you're in a vulnerable position. The third party isn't. So the third party is very important. So I think that, I've kind of outlined a few things there. I don't know whether you want to carry on, because I think we've made some good points so far. It's starting to get to the crux of the matter.
Well, you have to take responsibility yourself. I mean, in an exorcism, somebody else is taking the responsibility. They can get rid of the voices temporarily. But if you don't change the way you think and start moving on a positive spiritual path and start leaving these negative thoughts and negative entities behind, they're going to just come right back. So it's like the Bible says, you know, if you sweep out a room in the house, or you clean out the house and you don't fill it with positive spiritual stuff, they'll come right back, and they'll come back with their friends. So it'll be even worse. You know.
Exactly.
So Marie, do you want to, what was it like for you when your boyfriend, who was hearing the voices, started telling you to kill yourself? What was that? What was that like for you?
It was so hurtful, because like he was basically breaking me down emotionally and then pushing me to kill myself. But like I used to self-harm because of it. I still have scars on my arms from it. But like it was awful, because he just kept pushing me. He would say, "Oh, you're too selfish to kill yourself. You would never do it anyway." Like laughing about it and stuff.
So when
and
you hurt yourself, what was his reaction?
He just laughed. He just laughed. He was just like, "You're so stupid," you know. Like not a shred of remorse, empathy that he had, that he caused me to hurt myself, or he, you know, not a shred of remorse. They see, the thing is, people think that they can help this person, or you can solve them, or you can cure them. And like, if they're not going to grow as a person and grow in virtue, like that's what they say, where you lacked, the demons came in where you lacked in virtue, but that is your opportunity to grow in virtue, and you can overcome it. But you need to consent to, first of all, mostly consent to them coming in, but you can consent to making them leave. But that has to, in order to do that, you have to work on yourself. Don't know what, you know, you can become a better person and try your best and become more positive, help people, become more empathetic, you know, alms giving and all that, you know. But if you don't do that, if this person that you're involved with doesn't have any intentions of being a good person in the near future or changing their own ways, so these things do not feed off them, then you gotta just cut your losses, because there's nothing you can do. Obviously, you're not them. You can't control them. You know, they have to want to be liberated. So and as you said, if you clean out the house, and the Bible does say that, they will come back with vengeance. But see, as well as that, I'm going to also mention that a lot of people cast out demons by fasting and prayer as well. And fasting is a very good way of for the trickier ones, you know, it actually does help. But that's just me adding to what you were saying, Jerry.
Well, that's true. I mean, prayer, the 23rd Psalm, praying for help, because if there's a negative side, there's a positive side. So you need to start turning your energy from the negative side to the positive side and start moving up that positive spiritual path, because these things have no mercy. I remember one patient where the voices told him, well, if you poke out your eye, we'll go away and we'll leave you alone forever. And he poked out an eye, and then they came back and they said, you stupid asshole, look what you did. You know, now you're deformed for life. And they started laughing at him and mocking him for listening to him. So that's how evil and disgusting these things are.
Yeah, that's something that you want to deal with lightly as well. And I would say too as well, like you'll probably need to yourself, if you've been involved with someone like that, you would probably have to also yourself, you'd have to grow in a positive way as well, because they can come after you too. You know, I had old Hag Syndrome after he passed away, and you know, where I never had old Hag Syndrome before, but there was a night where I was laying in my bed and I had the sleep paralysis. An evil witch, like an old hag, came to kill me. But funny enough, for some reason, I was actually able to get up out of my bed and actually I started punching it, and it never came back. You know, so I started beating the crap out of it. I don't know how that actually happened, but then it just left me alone. But it was very. But the thing is, these things follow you too. They do follow you. They might not possess you, but they can oppress you as well. They can fuck.
I think the main point here that we need to bring up also is that these things are interdimensional. So the time, distance, and all the rest of it doesn't mean anything. So these attacks can be directed and come in when you're not aware of them. Doesn't have to be anybody there, obviously. That's the whole point of the supernatural aspect of it. But I think the main point we're trying to get over is that gateways are how these things get in. Now, we started off by saying the gateways can be many things. The gateways which people intentionally use, which open up these doorways, are drugs and alcohol. Those are the two. Sexual abuse and trauma are the other ones.
Yeah, physical, sexual, and horrendous emotional abuse. So
they're generational too.
There's
There's generational as well. They can attach themselves to your bloodline, and also we have one called the Banshee in Ireland, and they attach themselves to certain family bloodlines as well. Like there's, you know, they can be inherited. It's kind of sad, but you know.
I think that's also a tribal thing. Yeah, I've come across that, and that is something. Now, this is a point which I think is quite important that you've brought up. Some of these tribes, including people I know, worship their ancestors. Now, you have to go back and see what your ancestors have actually done before you worship them. I think that's a really good idea. If they've gone around chopping people up, raping and pillaging, and doing terrible things in the past, then don't worship them.
Yes, exactly.
You know, this is a really important point, because a lot of these tribes that swept across from, like Mongolian tribes, for instance, they were warring tribes, so nothing was off the charts. So if this is an important point, I think that people get into a romanticized idea of who their ancestors were. I've no idea who my ancestors were. I'm not that interested. If they, you know, it's a complicated issue, but this idea of the Banshee and all this sort of stuff is quite interesting, because these are archetypes. So you're going back to archetypes like that, and Lilith, which I talked about at the beginning of the show, these, and Astarte, and these get pushed into the new age as though they're okay. I mean, there's idiot Westerners will say that Kali is the Earth Mother. Kali is a demon with 12 skulls round her neck who demands blood sacrifices. Everybody in the East knows that, right? But you get these New Agers who will open themselves up to the influence of these entities without even knowing what they're doing. Now, some people may find that a bit trivial, but again, it's another gateway. And I think you have to shut all the doors personally. What do you think on that, Jerry, as a closing thought?
Yeah, because they're very sly. And the
Yes.
intergenerational thing, from what I've seen, the hundreds of schizophrenics I've spoken with, some of them have done some really horrendous, horrible things. And when I didn't look at their records unless I had to, because it would bias me. But the times I did look at their records and their background, they were treated horribly. They were locked in closets. They were burned with cigarettes. They were burned with lighters. They were tortured. They were emotionally tortured. They were physically tortured. And their parents neglected them. They did horrible things to these kids. So here's these kids starting off in life with a negative aspect. They're thinking negative, they're expecting negative, they attract negativity, they attract negative friends, they attract negative situations. So when you talked about the generational, it's almost like these people, the youngsters, are being programmed by their schizophrenic parents to be food for these entities. And it goes from generation to generation like that, unless it's somehow broken up. And unfortunately, the Western mental health system is awful. So, they don't acknowledge spiritual anything, nothing. There is no spirituality to it at all. It's their drugs. Take these drugs, knock yourself out, and shut up. So what they do over here is they bring them into a mental hospital. They lock them up for a week. They exhaust their insurance. They fill them full of antipsychotic drugs, so they're like zombies. The voices and the person are both, drugged to the point of just being zombies. And then they release them and say, stay on these meds. After a month or two, the effects of the meds are so awful that they quit, and then they go psychotic again. Unless a spiritual aspect is brought into this, they will never have a cure for schizophrenia. It just isn't going to happen, because this is a spiritual war. It's a spiritual disorder. It's nothing to do with genetics. It's not. They haven't found any genetic link. They haven't found any chemical imbalance. Psychiatry has no idea what they're treating. They have no idea what causes this. They have no idea what to do about it other than drug the person senseless. They don't know the cause. They don't know the cure. All they're doing is dishing out drugs from big pharma that's making billions of dollars a year. And the price on these drugs are horrendous. Here in the U.S., it takes probably $800 to $1,000 worth of these drugs to stay sane for one of these people for a month. You can drive across the border to Mexico, and you can get a month's supply for about $35 or $40. That's how badly they're taking advantage of the people that are suffering the most. These people
of course, that's the sort of psychiatric industry, Jerry. We've talked about that many times, but we're actually talking about people who aren't even diagnosed here, and there are many of those. There are many people who you will come across in your daily life who have entities attached to them or have a profoundly evil aspect to them. And I talk about this to a lot of people, because it's something that's increasing, because I believe that because of the rise in narcissism and people's lack of ability to take responsibility for their actions, all this is being increased, and it's being increased by design. That's what I believe. I think that it's being increased intentionally to cause as much havoc as possible, because what do you do then? You impose more control. It all works for the new system. So the more destabilization is there, the more people are out of control of their own minds, the more easier to control they actually are.
Well, keep in mind that they're trying to instill fear. Because once they instill fear, people are going to look for some solution, and the government's going to be there. Here's a solution. Give us more control. So you have to not only take responsibility for your behavior, you have to take responsibility for your thoughts and your thinking. And you have to watch constantly what you're thinking. And when a negative thought comes in there about yourself or anybody else, that is not your thought. You have to keep in mind that not all your thoughts are your own. Not all your thoughts belong to you.
That's right.
And the positive spirits, they react more in feeling and intuition. They're more subtle. than the negative ones. The negative ones can barge right into your head and say stuff. You're a jerk. You're stupid. You're worthless. Nobody likes you. People are talking behind your back. I mean, everybody experiences this kind of stuff sooner or later. That's them.
Intrusive thoughts as well.
Yeah, you have to watch your thoughts.
Even I get intrusive thoughts sometimes too. You're like, or I'm walking across. I'd be like, I don't know if it's like the same thing, but like I'd be like walking over a bridge and then something goes, throw your phone in the bridge or something.
Yeah.
Or like I'm at a
Yes,
really
we
high
talked about
building.
that last time. We talked about that last time, and it happened quite recently actually, because someone I know was having a psychotic episode, and it was just pure hatred coming out of them. And something came into my head, which was like, take them out, kill them. And you wouldn't think of these sort of things. And this is actually how these murders happen, I think.
Yes.
Because people have just lost their minds. So that's what I'm trying to say here, I think, if anything, is that this constant building of your own awareness is the only way to deal with it, because it is increasing on the planet. There's no doubt about that. I mean, this whole COVID cult is increasing it.
Exactly.
The way that people are behaving is increasing it. And look at what's happening. The world is under a new system of governance. Governments don't matter anymore. We've seen what's happening in America. We've talked about it, Jerry. It doesn't matter if you're the president of the United States anymore. Nothing matters with these people. So we are going into a very destabilizing period. And the destabilization is where a lot of this negative stuff can come in. People are going to get more and more negative. They're going to get locked down. They're going to be controlled more. Everything that is in their life, which they thought was theirs, is being taken away from them. So watch out. That's what we have to do, in my view.
Look at the thoughts that the mainstream media is filling your head with. You're going to die. Yeah, gaslighting. You're going to die. You're going to get sick. Yeah, everybody's got to watch out for this. Suffocate yourself. Hide your face. Stay away from others. It's all the stuff that the voices tell schizophrenics. It's the same stuff. Only it's coming through on a major macroscopic scale. Be afraid. Be fearful. Hide yourself. Isolate yourself. Yeah, it's all the same stuff. I mean, these are these demonic forces at a large scale.
It's the propaganda, Jerry.
Yes.
It's the very nature of this propaganda. It is exactly like those voices.
It is.
It's exactly the same thing. There is no difference.
No.
It's a negative impulse, and it's very, very devious and subversive. But it's very simple as well, because what comes out of the media with this nonsense is so transparently ridiculous that anybody who is aware can see through it. But if you're being conditioned to it, it's like being the victim of an abusive relationship. It wears you down, and then you let it in.
Right.
And then you've lost control. So you're in an abusive relationship with the media. The media is abusing you.
And the government.
That's what it does.
And the government, they're on the same path. They're together, controlling everybody. But the thing is, the best thing is also to not be afraid. Do not live in any kind of fear. Now we're talking about the demonic. Look,
Yes.
I'm not afraid about talking about anything like this. This does not scare me. Desensitize yourself to the fact that these things exist. Don't be shocked or alarmed by the fact that the demonic exists or the diabolical is influencing. Don't even, just accept it as truth, because you're not going to, whenever you're actually confronted with the reality of it at any point, you're going to be more prepared than anybody else, so don't be afraid of it. Just accept it, that it's real. And if you don't, whatever, but for those who do, just accept that it's real and don't be shocked whenever you're confronted with it.
I think there was some interesting points being made there, and we've done several of these shows, Jerry. I think every one of them has been good in a kind of different way. We cover the same sort of ground. I think that the That's a Lie program or idea that Sherry had together is a brilliant one, and as you know, it worked. In a situation that I was in. It worked, and that person pulled themselves back. And that's what it's about. Awareness, creating a sense of awareness, because most people, I don't know if you've noticed this, everyone out there, they're not aware of anything anymore. They're not interested in what you're saying. They interrupt, they don't listen, they have no focus. And that's all part of it as well. this constant distraction. I called my show a few weeks ago The Age of Constant Distraction, because the age of constant distraction is where all this nonsense comes in, because people aren't thinking for themselves, or they don't have awareness. Then they're getting scammed in all sorts of different ways and abused in all sorts of different ways. And that is really what the priest class taught the people in the high ups, as far as my research goes. In other words, there are people on this planet who know how to deal with this stuff, but the whole idea is that they don't want the general mass to know about it, because it's not in the public interest and the common good, because it's the public interest and the common good for you to be controlled and for you to be defenseless and for you to have no real cognitive ability to see what's going on. And I think we should probably leave it there, Jerry, unless you've got anything else to say.
Well, yeah, you look at the educational system that we've all been exposed to in the Western world. It's like, listen to authority. You know, don't confront your professors with stuff that, you know, just do what you're told. Do what you're told. You know, it's like, we know what's right, and they actually program you to listen and to authority. You know, whatever they say goes. I mean, they start you off young in elementary school, and it goes all the way up to graduate school. You know, this is the way it is. You do what we say. This is the truth. Don't oppose us. Don't bring up any contradictions. And if you do, you're a bad apple. You're targeted.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I think that the other point we made during the show was how you get sucked in, and we've talked about this, Jerry, when you want to constantly try and solve a problem, or you want the person to get better. It really is up to them, and this is where the responsibility comes in, and that is very, very important, because people who take no responsibility for their actions are massive energy drainers. Mm-hmm. And we've all had them over the years, and they will actually destabilize you and marginalize what you're doing in every single way. So I think we kind of rounded it up. I don't think there's much else to say there, Jerry, unless you've got another point before we call it a day.
You have to take responsibility for your mind and your thoughts, because not all your thoughts are yours, and you're programmed from the time you're a little kid to believe that all thoughts that show up in your head are yours. They are not. You know, again, every negative thought about yourself or anybody else does not come from you. It's put in your head to try to get you to behave in a way that will generate negative emotional energy, so these entities can draw it off and feed off of you.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, is that state of intrusionlessness to this kind of thing, because these negative thoughts come into everyone's head, and they come in when you wander or you've been knocked off your center. You know, they basically, they can come just into your head, but the really negative ones, I've found, this is only from personal experience, come in basically when you're in a negative situation, or you've drifted somewhere. You're not fully conscious and aware. If you're fully conscious and aware, then these things, I think, can be dealt with. At least you can defend yourself from them. And a lot of people laugh at this stuff, then leave themselves wide open. And it might just happen on a Saturday night when they've had too much to drink, and they'll get into a massive amount of trouble. But if you're always aware of what you're doing and you don't allow this stuff to get in, then it won't get in. I think that's the main point here.
Yeah, the biggest deception these negative forces ever perpetrated on us is that they don't exist. That's the most dangerous thought there is. I mean, they're there. They don't want to be uncovered. They don't want to be exposed. They don't want people like us talking about them.
That's another point in that, yes.
A lot of those famous atheists, you know, they were 33rd degree Freemasons, and you know what they do, you know.
If you sell your soul to that one, you've lost anyway. I mean, it's a very sad thing to do, really. But the whole philosophical argument behind a lot of this stuff was that it was going to prepare you for death, prepare you for a transition. That is what higher knowledge was always meant to be about. It's not about what a lot of Freemasons think of, like, who's going to help me to make some more money and raise my social profile. And that's what they do. They go to these events, they get drunk with all these other blokes, They get away from their wives for a few nights, a month or something. Then they end up indebted to this absolutely horrendous scam. And that's all it is, because it's a wheel of what they call the samsara thing of going nowhere. In other words, it will take you nowhere. And I thought it was very interesting. People like Manly P. Hall, who wasn't a Freemason, philosophized about Freemasonry in such a way to make it very attractive, when in fact the reality of it is nothing of the sort.
I did a show. Freemason.
He was made a Freemason, an honorary Freemason.
Oh, okay. Weird.
Yes, honorary 33rd degree. Well, they obviously liked his writing because he knew a lot more about it than they did. Because if you talk to any people who say they're Freemasons, then you'll find they know nothing about anything at all. So I think there's a big myth about this as well. I mean, there is a group called the Ellis Cohen, and I did a show called a plant. What was it called? A cult that rule the world ? Look into those higher occult theurgical branches of Freemasonry, and that is very creepy because they are openly engaging in black magic.
Yep, absolutely. It's terrifying to think of too. You're just, you don't think that this is a reality, but it is, and the stuff that they get up to is completely aberrantly. No.
Well, I don't think it's uncommon around the world, because most traditions of what they call pagan or heathen or tribal have gone into this. It's only advanced civilizations that haven't gone into it. Most civilizations aren't still very advanced at the lower level. In many parts of the world, black magic is still practiced on a daily basis because people think that it's a good idea. You know what I mean? So not everyone's got a higher level of thinking like that. So I think that a lot of this stuff is ingrained, and I've found it's ingrained in certain religions. So, yeah, I think that, the whole thing of the New Age has kind of blurred the lines here. It's blurred the lines, and it's caused a lot of damage. And, a good place to leave it, I think, Jerry and Marie.
Yep.
Yeah, good.
We don't want to bore them. We've been going an hour and a quarter, and I think we've covered some really interesting stuff there. And Jerry, we've been getting comments here that we should do this again, and there's lots of things we can talk about. We talk about a lot of stuff over the internet when we are not doing shows, when we can catch up, and there's a lot of things I think we can still cover. So let's do this again soon. And troll-free stream for once. Yes, it was actually, but somebody actually said there's no evidence to link these negative voices with paranoid schizophrenia, and they started making. So I've just got rid of that. Why they watch it?
Then that person has never talked to a schizophrenic.
Exactly. So the other thing is that you sometimes you get people on here, and they start making these comments. They say, well, what are they doing here? If you don't like it, don't listen to it. What's the point? Well, that's what they call trolling. I know a lot about that. We are one of the most undermined shows on the internet. We've been doing it for years, and people often only find out about Windows on the World when other people have mentioned it to them. So spread the word, and look at windowsontheworld.net. We do a show every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. UK time. The archive is full of fascinating shows, including the shows with Jerry. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Okay, and if you want more information on that,
Jerry,
you can get our book here that Sherry and
let's
I
just
wrote.
do the book, Jerry, let's do the book, because I haven't advertised the book for a while. An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind by Jerry Marzinski and Sherry Sweeney. And it's available where?
It's available at jerrymarzinski.com, and it'll give you the whole history of how this started. Sherry heard voices when she was a young woman, and how she beat them, and what's actually going on. So it'll take you step of, the scam that psychiatry is pulling with their medications, and move you through what the voices are, how they operate, and then tell you somewhat what to do about them. It's all there.
Yes. Great. Good place to leave it.
Okay.
Thanks, Marie. And
Bye.
thanks, Jerry.
Yes, ma'am.
See you then. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Cheers then.
Bye-bye, Marie.
Spread the word and send this to people, and look in the archive. There's more stuff with Jerry, and we've gone into great detail on this stuff. So if you're interested, do have a look. See you soon, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.